What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Robbie Cassidy, and today we're going to discuss regaining confidence after an injury. Now, what we're going to talk about is after a normal injury, like an acute injury, and then a chronic injury, an injury that has stayed around or been lingering on for a couple of years after. And really, acute injury, a lot of the time, when you injure it, you get your confidence back quick enough. It's the long-term injuries that takes a bigger knock. It definitely does take that small bit longer to get back into things because of the fact that it keeps flaring up and it keeps happening again, and it just sets you back in a step. So it can definitely be difficult for some people who have injuries going on for a long time. Let's say whether it be back pain, whether it be hip pain or shoulder issues or even an ankle issue, something that just keeps reoccurring. That's what I'm going to talk about as well. So both principles apply, nearly the exact same principles apply to both of them. It's just you need to tease it out a small bit more for the longer term injuries. So before I jump on this podcast, I want to first say that if anyone is dealing with a long-term injury or a short-term injury, I am taking on clients for consultations, like physio consultations, and I'm taking people on for longer-term coaching as well. So both are available at the moment. If you were looking for the longer-term coaching, it's more based around you've had an injury for a year or two and you want to get back, or a couple of years and you want to get back doing something that you love. That's always a really, really good way to start. And with the physio consultations, it can be anything from you had a hamstring tear last week. Okay. Now, to jump straight into what's the real issue here with regaining confidence after an injury. Well, we know that, and anyone here who's had an injury will know that the first training session back is always going to be the hardest to get back to, because you don't know really if you're fully right. You have to take in a lot of things into account, in like how other people react, people who don't really know about the injury that you've had. It might be, let's say, in pro sports where you might be just carrying a small injury and you don't really want to let anyone else know, and you're trying to keep that under covers because you want to be playing the next game. And the same with an amateur sport, that happens all the time as well. But there's not someone fighting for your place as much, even though there is at a certain level. What I mean is it's not your livelihood that's on the line. So it's always going to be that first training session back that's difficult to get into. And obviously, if you're working with a physio or if you're working with a therapist, you should be kind of progressed back into it. It shouldn't be that you do your rehab and you jump straight back into it, but you should be kind of progressing yourself and slowly but surely upping the amount you do each training session and seeing how you get on with it. Okay? So really, that's what we're looking at the start. Now, if it's an injury that you are, let's say, like a runner, and you know it comes on after a certain amount of time, well, obviously you're going to still have to grade your exposure to that. I know a lot of runners say, once I hit mile 8 or once I hit the 10k mark, it's going to kick in, and that's definitely something there. But there's a lot more to that than it's just that once you hit the 10k mark, it kicks in because of the fact that you're re-injuring it. There's a lot of psychological factors that might also play into account there. Okay, and it's important to address those when you are taking it. So first off, what happens when we lose confidence in an injury or when we lose confidence in an area? Well, let's say if you have we'll use back pain, or no, actually we'll use shoulder pain as an example for this one because I've used back pain in other ones. So if you have a shoulder injury, let's say a dislocation, okay, or you have a slap lesion in your shoulder, and you injured first time, you kind of get back to playing, and you re-injure the second time, and it kind of takes a hit to your confidence. So the first time you injure it, you get back to play, you'll probably be wary of just putting it into certain positions. Now, because it was a small injury, you probably won't lose that much confidence, and you'll still kind of be confident of handing someone off or falling on that shoulder or hitting a shoulder in somebody or something like that. Now, if you've injured it a couple of times, you'll be a bit more wary of that, and because of that, you'll change your mechanics, you'll change your posture, and you'll change your movement patterns to accommodate that a bit more. So you're going to avoid taking hits on that side, which can be good and bad in certain situations. It could predispose you to other injuries, or it can also, I suppose, because you're avoiding it all the time, you do lose strength there, and it's going to predispose you to another injury in that shoulder or the same injury again. Okay. Now, when we lose confidence in an area like this, what happens on a neurological level, when you look at like your central nervous system and your brain and how that takes it into account, first we have to look at what it takes into account. And your brain and your nervous system takes everything in your environment into account, and then it also takes your own thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and attitudes into it as well. And what I mean by that is, although the body knows that you have an injury there, and you could say there's like an imprint on your system, so it knows that you've had an injury there in the past, so it will avoid certain positions unless you put it through those again. So like for some people it might be an overhead press, they might have lost their overhead or flexion to a certain point, or they might have lost a lot of strength overhead, or they might just be really, really tight when they try to go overhead with any movement, and now they've taken on a different type of a posture because of that. And that's a really common one with a shoulder injury, is that they won't go overhead with any movement. Now, that's firstly because it's if we think about what pain and tightness is, that's the body's reaction. Okay, so that's how the body takes care of itself. It stops you getting into these positions by just making everything tighter on the area, and then it gives you pain as well. Now, how that's obviously, let's say, your body, your nervous system, your subconscious confidence there. But now when you think about your conscious confidence and you're feeding into that, and as I said, it takes your thoughts, emotions and attitudes into account. So if you're thinking about that all the time and you're thinking that, all right, I can't go into that position or it will get injured again, or if you're thinking that last time I was there, it was really sore, well, you're feeding into that all the time. And what you're doing is you're causing the body to really prioritize that area and make it, I suppose it prioritizes that it doesn't get injured. So really and truly, you have to take care, or you have to become aware of your beliefs and become aware of your attitudes towards a certain point before you can start rehabbing it to the point of where you want to get it back to let's say, being stronger than before. Because I think when you look at rehab, it should be stronger than before when you get back. Now, what I mean by that as well is that if you become aware of that and you become aware of how you're changing as you go into certain positions, maybe your breathing changes, and if your breathing changes, then you're sending like those protective signals to the body. Everything's just going to get that bit tighter. It's going to lock up a small bit more. You might struggle to get to a certain point, or even when you get past a certain point, then you start to get this discomfort or pain in your shoulder. And people report it, sometimes it might be an impingement in there. Other people just say that the whole shoulder gets sore. Other people say they can't really feel it, or it's a bit diffuse. It's not in the exact place. And a lot of the time, these are symptoms from the body to just let you know that, okay, I'm not really comfortable with you going into that position, so let's avoid that position as much as possible. And we see this all the time with as I've kind of talked about shoulders, we're seeing this all the time with shoulder dislocations, that they won't go into like an extension or like abducted pattern because of the fact, or their arm out to the side, I should say, because of the fact that they injured it in that position before and it feels unstable and weak, so it locks up and gets tight. You see it with people who have back pain, that they don't bend down and they don't pick something up off the ground because they're afraid to bend their back in case they injure themselves. And because of that feeds in all the time. Looking at the back itself, that's going to feed into it. And when you do bend down then, because you have to, let's say, pick a pen up off the ground, or you have to pick up your shoes, or you have to bend down and tie your shoes, or tie your child's shoes, then you can get a flare up because you have told the body so much that you can't do that. And then when you actually have to do it, the body's like, it reacts to it. Okay, I shouldn't have done that because I wasn't supposed to go into that position because I believe that that's bad for my back. Okay, and clearing it up, there's no position bad for your back or good for your back. Anyone that's been listening to this podcast long enough knows well that I will always come back to that. So, as I was saying, it's going to organize itself different because of that. Now, let's look at that scenario again with back pain, of how it does actually organize itself a small bit different. So if you have injured your back, or if you have back pain going on a long time, how will your body organize itself differently to avoid that? And take into account now, when you get a back flare up, when it gets sore, it's obviously extremely sore. Some people are really set back from it, and that's okay, and I understand that. But when you're coming out of that flare up and things are starting to come right again, you're starting to return to work, and that if you don't address those beliefs of, okay, what happened to me there is I bent over wrong, or I picked something up wrong and now my back flared up. If you don't address those and fix those beliefs, then you're putting yourself in a really dangerous position, because the body will organize itself differently in that you will actually start going into more of an RDL style pattern as opposed to a flexion pattern. And what I mean by that is an RDL, anyone that's in the gym who's RDLs, the idea is that you keep your back straight and you hinge from your hips and you pick stuff up. And a normal flexion would be like if you were like a normal hump in your back when you're going down to pick something up, or a big arch in your back. that'd be a flexion pattern. Okay. Now you are supposed to flex your spine. That's the way it is. It was made that way, and it was meant to be extremely strong, extremely robust, and it's supposed to be able to take those loads. But if you stop going into that place and position because you've lack of confidence and you kind of lost confidence in the area, your body will transition over to this RDL style movement. Okay, so you'll keep your back straight and you'll try squat down with your back straight to pick stuff up, or you'll try hinge at the hips to go down and pick stuff up, which at times might be a beneficial pattern at the start. Now, I'm not saying that you should ever do that really, but it might feel good at the start, and it might feel like you're protecting yourself and you're keeping yourself safe. But after a couple of days, that's not a good pattern, because it's not the way your body's made, and you're working actually against the way it was built. And if you start working against the way it's built and you stop moving certain parts, then you'll notice that that actually really will increase your tightness and will increase your pain a good bit. And then on top of that, you're going to have more flare-ups. Reason being is that when you do go into the position of what you said that you shouldn't have gone into, then the body will kick up and it'll say, okay, I shouldn't have done that. And it works both ways. So it's a vicious cycle. This is the thing. And it's catching at one. If you can catch it at one end of the cycle, you can fix it on the other. Like, that's the good thing about it. It is easy to fix. Well, it's not easy to fix, but it's possible to fix. It just takes a bit of time. And you can attack either side of the cycle, but you have to just know that there is a couple of sides to it. You have to be aware of that, and it's not just one thing. And what I mean by that is, if you can change your beliefs around bending down and pick stuff up, that will change your way your body organizes itself. Or if you actually physically change the way it organizes itself and start to practice those movements more, that will change your beliefs around it. So that's what I mean. It works both ways in that. Okay, and this is an issue, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here with rehab and rehab practitioners, and that they always say, right, well, the foot is the most important thing, or the hips are the most important thing. You know, they always have these different ideas of what you have to look at. And I always try to take a kind of more of a holistic approach to it, and that, like, in general, if you have a hip problem or a knee problem, let's say, and you fix the foot, you get the foot moving better, the body will not just start working, the foot won't just start working better itself. Everything up along the chain will change to accommodate the foot to work more and move more. And this is where people get mixed up. But if you did the same thing at the hip and you got more movement in your hip, everything down the chain would also change. Okay, because it doesn't just fix one thing and everything is all perfect again. If you change one part of the body, everything works together, all systems are connected, so they will start changing up along, positively or negatively. Now, that's why I'm saying if you're too focused on one area all the time, you might pigeonhole a client, or you might pigeonhole a person, or you might have felt that you were pigeonholed into one thing, because I hear a lot of people saying, well, I have back pain because I have fallen arches. And maybe that could be contributing to your back pain. It could be the fact that you haven't lifted properly. It could be the fact that you're not building strength. It could be the fact that you're severely fatigued, you're stressed out. It could be that your thoracic spine and your ribs aren't moving properly. Do you ever look up the chain? It could be that your neck isn't moving properly, or your shoulder isn't. Now, there's loads of things that play into it. But as I said, if you change one, that will have an effect on the chain. So this idea of there's these camps of you have to look at the hips, you have to look at the foot, you have to look at the rib cage. Like, great, but understand that if you change one, you're going to change all of them. So it doesn't make that much of a difference, but it is important to keep that in mind, that nothing works in isolation. Now, moving on from that, I was going to say our beliefs change around an area that are previously injured. And this is really, really what knocks our confidence, is that when you've injured an area, and I've touched on this a bit, when you've injured an area, you will start consciously avoiding certain tasks and movements. And this is what I really don't like to see, but it happens all the time. And it happens with my clients, in that they love playing soccer, they love playing football, they love hill walking, or they love running or something like that. And now they have back pain or hip pain or an injury, and they have just kind of sidelined themselves. And they might have went to one physio, and Jesus, I've heard things from people, and I don't know if it's the way they picked it up off what the physio said or the doctor said, or if they just have an absolute gobshite of a physio or doctor, and that said you can never go back to that again. And that type of medical advice is absolute shite. But anyway, so that's what I think. I really dislike that, the fact that they sideline themselves As I said, it could be that the physio or doctor said that to them, or that's just the way they picked it up off of it, because it works both ways as well. It's not, a lot of the time it's not the doctor that's saying that, it's just the way you kind of interpret it, what they are saying to you. And then they stopped doing it, and they loved it for so long, and now they've cut that off because they can't do it anymore. Now, let's say you stop playing football, okay, because you have a knee injury, or you have a hip injury, or you heard someone say you have no cartilage left in your knee. A very common one that I always hear. No relation to pain, but anyway, I'll move on. We can talk about that in another podcast. But let's say you've stopped playing football. Now, because you stopped playing football, it was I took too many hits, or it was the way I was running, or it was the way I was landing, and all this, and all these things are playing into it, and they're all definitely might be contributing to the issues that you're feeling. But if you stop playing football, soon then you'll stop running, and then the body was meant to run firstly before I move on. So you'll stop running, and then after that, then you might stop hill walking because that makes it flare up, and then you go to cycling instead. And now cycling, because it was a change of position and your body kind of needs to change, you might start getting pain in your hip, knee or back, and then you stop doing that. And it's because of these limiting beliefs of that, well, I had to stop doing football, and then I had to stop doing running, so then I had to stop doing hill walking. It's that, what is it? It's what's the word for it? It's it's complete. That's it. It's an end result. There's nothing else. You've no other choice in it. And you're kind of, I don't mean to come back to the word pigeonholing, but you are in a way just giving yourself a one option because the other option isn't available anymore. When it is available, and it's always available, now you can always get back to doing stuff that you love doing if you spend the time actually going through what you have to do and taking the time out your day. Now, it's not going to be that you do it in 2 weeks. You're not going to get back and start playing in 2 weeks' time, because if you've been the last 3 years out, but you will get back over the next 5 months, and you can do that. And it doesn't matter what it is. Like I've worked with people in all areas of it, or all sides of the coin, where people have had fairly severe injuries that they really believe that they weren't getting back, and they were probably told by people or by other professionals that they shouldn't go back playing because of the fact of risk of injury, and they're back doing it now. It just takes a bit more time. The body's highly adaptable. If it adapts to you not playing, it can adapt to you playing. And that's just the way it works. It'll focus its energy and prioritize whatever you put it under. So losing confidence is a huge one here, because it does really, really, really affect what you do later in life. And if you stop doing something when you're 25, 26, 27, up to 30, 40, even up to 50 years old, think about the next 30 years or 40 years. You're only going to be putting more limitations on yourself as you go through it. Okay, so really take that into account. And that's kind of one of the main points of this podcast that I want to get across. Don't set them too early that you have to live with them the rest of your life. And there's very few limitations that can be put on somebody or put on the human body if you take enough time out of your day, and if you take enough time to actually rehab it and get it right again and get it back to a performing level. Now, moving from there then. So we've talked about how people lose confidence a lot, how beliefs and attitudes affect it, how you might, like injuries, re-injured, if you keep re-injuring it, how that affects it. I want to talk about how do you get confidence back. Okay, now confidence itself, like, I know it's kind of a broad term, but what I mean is like that you're actually confident in the area to go out and compete with it at a certain level or perform at a certain level. You're confident that it will hold up and you'll be good to go if it does, or when it does, I should say. So when you are looking to get your confidence back, what you're doing is you're looking to change the conscious and subconscious mind, as well as how your nervous system perceives the area. And that's really what you're trying to do. If you can change how your nervous system perceives the area, you'll change how you think about the area itself, and you will change how your body works with that area. Okay, so let it be your back for now, because the back is probably the most applicable one, because a lot of people struggle with back issues. Now, it could be a hip as well, whatever you feel it is, you can apply the same principles to it. But you need to change how the subconscious mind, your conscious mind, and the nervous system perceives it, because it is perception, and obviously you're going to have flare-ups and you might have setbacks along the way, and that could be on a physiological level. But if you take care of all that other stuff, the neurological and the psychological, the physiological will take care of itself. So first off, how to get your confidence back. You need to go through a thorough rehab plan and then have a prehab plan on top of that. So you're working through it, you're working through getting it back to a certain level that you want, and then you're keeping on top of other things. And your prehab plan might be you have a certain amount of exercises, or your prehab plan might be that you recover after a certain amount of training sessions. Okay, so prehab isn't just, all right, I'm going to do these exercises. It's load management is a huge part of that as well, and recovery is a massive part of it too. So you need to change how the body does react to those things. Now, and as I said, you need to be thorough with your rehab and prehab. Doing rehab for 4 weeks, and you've been out for the last 2 years, you'll probably feel good in 4 weeks' time, but you haven't taken care of the area fully because it's gone on so long. So it does take 6, 12, 18, 24 weeks. It does take a long time to get these things back, or not a long time, but you can get back to a certain level, but you need to keep on top of it after that time as well. Okay, just because you get back doesn't mean that you stop your rehab then. You need to push on all the time and keep working on new things. So what should a rehab plan look like? It should include some type of progressive plan that addresses all issues from the physiological, psychological, neurological side of things. It needs to take all those into account. Okay, so it should include some type of mobility, some type of strength exercises. It should probably include, depending on where it is, some type of proprioceptive exercises, which is your body's awareness in space. You might include vestibular. You might include cognitive behavioral therapy. It could include changing your beliefs around certain techniques or certain patterns or certain movements or how the body works. And then it could actually be that you change your movement overall, that you change how you move. Now that's a bit more difficult because changing how the body moves completely means you have to change completely how the nervous system organizes itself, and has done over the last couple of years, but it can be included. And then what I would say is one of the most important things to get your confidence back to play again, or to return to sport, or return performance, or return to an activity that you love, would be working on the areas and the positions you feel insecure or you feel uncomfortable with, and specifically singling them out and then working on them. And as an example, what I do is when I'm working with someone who has, let's say, an ACL tear. An ACL tear is very easy to rehab, technically. It's just you build up all the muscles, you get back to body awareness, you get them back running, you get them back turning, you get them back doing all that crack. But the psychological side of an ACL tear, because it takes so long to get them back, it can be a lot of things that are left over and that stick around. And there might be a sensitivity there, pain sensitivity. It might hang around and flare up anytime they go running again. But what I would look at there is, and as I was saying, for an example, is people with ACL tears struggle with some things. And some of them might be, like, when you look at it, you could do all the jumping in the world. You could do all the sprinting and turning and cutting and all that in the world. But a lot of the time when you actually talk to these guys and girls, it's that, well, I'm actually afraid to bend down and pick a ball up off the ground if there's somebody behind me, because I feel like that'll put my knee in an awkward position. Now, I could be in the gym all day, giving them squats and lunges and all that, but that's not going to build it up as much. It's about progressively increasing their tolerance and giving them this graded exposure to going down, picking the ball up off the ground, and working through it. The same thing is with landing from a jump. Like, I could be doing all the box jumps in the world, but you need to take their focus off it and to something else where they actually have to catch a ball and then land. That's another big one. With a runner, it might be that they don't like running, let's say, up hills or down hills, or they don't like running a certain course. They don't like running a certain distance. They find that, let's say, 80 to, like, I know some runners, they find that once they hit a certain mark, that's them done. Things flare up and they can't run anymore. So they might be running a 70 mile a week or an 80 mile a week, and then things start flaring up and they start getting bad. But that might not always be the case. Okay, there could be other factors there, and as I said, it could be that belief of once you hit that point, you're done and the body can't take any more, that is actually limiting you in that but when you get into that position. So it could be that instead of when you hit the 70 mile week, the body breaks down. It might be that you hit that 70 mile, 80 mile week, but then you didn't plan your recovery properly. So you just increased your exposure to it, but then you never took time to adapt to it. And that's a really common one. And it's because to get to that level, to get to when you start, especially when you start up into 80, 90 miles a week, which is a lot, it takes a certain mindset to get there. And you need to kind of keep pushing, And a lot of the time, you get so focused on pushing that you forget to pull back and you forget to recover to all the pushing that you've done before it. And this is really common in what I see with runners, is that they do get caught in that mindset all the time, that they love to push on, and then they just don't give themselves a chance to recover, and then something breaks down. And you can apply that to any sport. You can apply that to a cyclist, you can apply that to a triathlete, you can apply that to a rugby player, a GAA player, whatever. It's the guys and girls that get stuck pushing and forget to pull back are the ones that are going to get injured, and the ones that have they might have these set beliefs that once they do a certain amount of training, like in August, I always get injured. Like, why August? Like, is it the fucking star signs that a certain type of astronomy that's doing it to you, or is it I'm out in Bali, just to let you know? So it's a big thing out here. But is it that that's doing it to you, or is it the fact that you've pushed hard from, let's say, May, June for the last, because you're starting to get closer to the championship, or even before that, February, March, you've been pushing hard, and August is the time that everyone is also pushing hard because it's coming around the championship time, and then you start to break down. Like, that's what you need to look at. Or is it the moon that's doing it to you? So, like, that's the other thing. You need to be rational about your beliefs. I'm not saying, actually, I should say that it was not the moon, or that's not your star sign, or that's not astronomy that's doing it to you. But I would definitely look at the other things first before I would start looking at that in detail. But I don't know enough about them, so I'm probably gonna have to really dig deeper into them. But yeah, no. Looking on from that, then, as I was saying, you need to work on the ones you're insecure about, and you need to take an overall look at what's happening and why it is happening. And that's really important. To actually get your confidence back, you have to become aware of what's limiting it and what's affecting it. And if it's a belief that you have, once you hit a certain point, that you're going to get injured, well, then that's going to be ingrained, and you need to get over that, and you need to try work on that in certain ways. And there is other ways you can do it. And there's other things you can do, including breathing, and including, as I said, mobility, strength, including looking at your recovery and stuff like that. It all really, really needs to be taken into account. And singling out one thing and saying, if you just keep working on strength, it'll fix it, I'd be lying. Because if it was that easy, then everyone would be doing it. Every personal trainer or every S&C coach would have a load of athletes that would never get injured. But that's not the case. Now, looking then, lastly, as I said, you need to assess where you're feeling uncomfortable, and that needs to be addressed. So looking back at what I was saying about back pain, if your belief and attitude is that if you bend down to pick something up off the ground, that's going to injure you, and you don't address that, and you don't practice that movement, and get confident at it, and then start going down and picking up resistant, or picking up heavier things off the ground, building through it, then it's going to be difficult for you. You'll hit a certain point in your rehab if you don't address those things. Okay, so it is important. Now, with another sport, it could be that you, as I said, in running, it could be when you run downhill, it really affects you. So maybe you need to take that out and single that out and practice it a small bit more. In basketball, it could be when you're jumping, or when you hit a certain amount of shots, that you start to feel that things will break down. Let's say in golf, it could be on the 10th hole, I start to kick up and things start to get bad. And they are all generally beliefs. Now, there could be beliefs associated with fatigue, that you get a certain level of fatigue, or you get fatigued at the 10th hole, and then things start to get sore. That could be also it. And maybe you have to look at working on actual fitness training, or working on building strength and stability and endurance. Yes, but having that belief will also affect you and will also hinder you. So it is important to become aware of those, and that attitude, really, really important to take care of those, and work around them, and work on top of them, and just get better at them in general, and improve your confidence. So as I said, and I kind of will leave it at that for now, but as I was saying, to get your confidence mind back, you have to look at how you can change the conscious, subconscious, nervous system as well. And you can change the nervous system through working on mobility, strengths, breathing exercises. You can change it. That will also change the conscious. It will also change the subconscious. But you need to address all these beliefs and attitudes, and you need to take them into account, and you need to actually talk through them with a professional, or kind of figure them out yourself. Obviously, when you have someone to kind of help you along, it does make it a bit easier, but you could do this stuff yourself as well. But on top of that, then you need to kind of make a plan and set certain goals of what you want to get back to. And that's going to be also very, very important in getting you back to the level that you want to get back at. So if I was to leave anything in this podcast, I would say it's understandable. Everyone loses confidence after an injury. And really, truly, it's the same with myself. when I was boxing, I used to get a shoulder injury and I used to kick up, or I've had different, let's say, ankle injuries or hamstring injuries, stuff like that. And you lose confidence after trying to get back into it. Okay? And as I said, it happens to everybody. But don't let that take over, and don't let that set certain beliefs that you can't do what you want to do. If you want to run a marathon, if you want to climb Kilimanjaro or a certain mountain, if you want to get back and compete in triathlons, if you want to get back playing with your club at a junior, intermediate, senior level, if you want to play rugby again, it can be done once you spend the time putting a plan in place, setting your goals, and then, as I said, taking into account all of these things that I've talked about, including mobility work, strength work, your proprioceptive stuff, your balance exercises, your diet, your sleep, your recovery methods. On top of that, you also need to look at your beliefs and your attitudes and how they may be affecting you. And if you kind of get a better overview of those, now I know I just mentioned a lot of things there, but if you get a better overview of those, you will set yourself up for success. And it might not be a 3-week success, but it could be the fact that you do get back playing 7-a-side soccer with your mates, or it could be the fact that you get to play with your team again, or it could be the fact that you feel like you accomplished something, you've achieved a life goal by climbing Kilimanjaro or Mount Everest or whatever you want to do. Set them big first is what I would always say. And I have a thing on my consultation sheet whenever I get a client to sign up. I have your goals, your SMART goals, and I have your big, hairy, audacious goal. Something that I want you to stick down there so that we know what you're aiming for in this, or we know that you're not that what you're aiming for, but what you're thinking bigger, because it is about thinking bigger and about improving yourself all the time. So don't set beliefs that are going to limit you and stop you getting to the places that you want to get back at, because you want to look back in your life and say, I did do that and I never set anything there that stopped me. You really do. Well, for me, I do anyway. I want to look back at my life and look at it as like I've heard other people describe it as like a highlight reel of different things that I've said, oh, I did that and I did this and I was happy with what I did, and I never set anything in the way that to stop me doing something. I never put a barrier in my way or an obstacle in my way, and let that stop me doing something that I wanted to do. So guys, that is everything that I wanted to talk about today. I hope that it makes sense what I was talking about actually getting your confidence back after an injury, what you have to do. Now, it sounds like there's a lot of things to do there, but really and truly, if you break it down, it is definitely possible. It's definitely possible to get back to a certain level, or to whatever level you want to. But you do have to commit, and you do have to take the time to do it. And without doing that, you will say in 10 years' time, Jesus, I should have went back and did that. And that's the last thing you want to be doing. So hopefully that gave you some insight on what you can do. Hopefully it gave you some bit of confidence in that you can get back to doing whatever you want to do. And hopefully it kind of gives you a bit more of a clear mind in terms of goals that you might want to achieve in the next couple of years, or even might give you an idea of how you've been limiting yourself in certain ways to this point. So that was the kind of goal of this podcast, is just to shed some light on that and how people may be limiting themselves when they shouldn't. And that's, everything I wanted to talk about, guys. So to finish off, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate this, and I can see the numbers are growing each week, which I'm delighted about. If you have any questions at all, any issues at all, get in contact with me, and send me a message on Instagram. Send me an email at mobilitytutor@gmail.com, or follow along on LinkedIn is kind of the other one that I use a bit. And that's the basis of it. My website is mobilitytutor.com, and you can go on there. You can check out the programs that I have, or you can look up other stuff that I do. As I said, if anyone is interested, I do physio consultations, remote physio consultations at the moment online, where we set up and we go through everything. We look at your injury history and we look at what your goals are. And then on top of that, I also do one-to-one physio consultations one-to-one coaching, I should say, where we look at things on the longer term, and we make a longer term plan, where it'll be 3 months, 6 month, or 12-month plan. And we look at getting back to a certain level and doing whatever you want to do and making sure that we do get there. So I'm working with people at the moment who are doing things from they want to let's say, run an ultra marathon where it's a 100 miler. Another few people who want to run 24-hour marathons. There's other things that people want to climb certain mountains. There's other things that people just want to get back playing five-a-side with their friends, or they just want to stop their back flaring up whenever they start training properly again. So across all levels, I cover most injuries and most topics or most activities. So if it's something that you're interested in, definitely send me a message and we can set up a call and we'll just talk about it in a bit more detail. If it's the right thing for you, we can go forward with it. If it's not, no problem. I'll send you on the right way of what you should be looking at longer term. But that's everything for me today, guys. Thank you very much for listening, and yeah, that's about all. I'll chat to you all again soon. Have a good one.